أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في قرآنه الكريم وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل لا أسألكم عليه أجرا إلا المودة في القربى آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلى الله عليه وسلم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
1179 years have passed since the Shahadat anniversary of our 10th Imam, Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn Muhammad al-Hadi al-Zaki al-Naki alayhi salatu wassalam.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
We extend our condolences to our living Imam, our present Imam, Sahib al-Zaman, Ajallahu
اللهم صل على
Ta'ala.
محمد وآل محمد.
History has taught us that after the Shahadat of our Holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam,
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
our Imams alayhi salatu wasalam have faced a lot of atrocities, a lot of punishments, a lot of tortures from all kinds, physical, imprisonments, house arrests, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of lessons that we need to learn from these lives of our Imams, and it is important for all of us to know, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran has asked us to, has told us about the Imams through various ayahs. For example, the ayat of Mawadda which I have just recited, that why he has chosen these Imams is because they were divinely chosen as guardians of what the Holy Prophet taught through the book of Islam, which is the Holy Quran, and also the lives that of the Imams are lessons for us to learn and ponder upon, because we may sometimes face similar situations in our life, and we need to learn from them as to how they adapted or how they faced those challenges and how they overcome those challenges and lived on. And when we look at the lives of, particularly the lives of our 7th Imam onwards, we will notice that there was increased pressure from the Bani Abbas. And we will notice that as the Imams passed away and the later Imams came about, the pressure increased because they knew that the Mahdi was going to come. They knew why? Because they know that the Holy Prophet has mentioned, there's a hadith that says that after me there will be 12 caliphs who will rule the nation, and all of them will be from the Quraysh. In some riwayat also mentions that they will be from the Bani Hashim. In fact, if we see the book of Sheikh Suleiman Qadusi, who wrote one of in his kitab, Yanabi al-Mawadda, in that he actually explains that these 12 caliphs that Rasulullah is talking about make reference to only the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because if you see the four Rashidun caliphs, they are only 4 in number. If you see the Bani Umayyah, they were less than 6 or less than 7. And if you look at the Bani Abbas, they were more than 20, 30s. In fact, they lived on until 1258 when they were taken over by the Ottoman Empire. So, Sheikh Suleiman Qadusi in his book, he explains clearly that these 12 caliphs that Rasulullah is talking about only make reference to the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. In fact, another scholar by the name of al-Junaini or Juwaini, in his book he writes, again he's a Sunni scholar by the way, he writes and specifically mentions who are these 12 caliphs that Rasulullah is talking about. Why? Because we know the story about a Jew that came to Rasulullah by the name of Netha and asked that who is the one that is going to be successor after you? And Rasulullah replied that it will be Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He said, what about after him? Rasulullah replied, his two sons, Hassan and Hussein alayhi salam, who were very young at that time. The Jew then continues to ask and says, what about after they are gone? And that is when Rasulullah names all the Imams' names, right from Ali all the way to the Mahdi. This is right there, written there in their books, clearly mentioned. We of course believe, but here we find them that, in other words, what I'm trying to say is that the Bani Abbas knew that the Mahdi was going to come. A simple example, I'll quote you from the life of Imam al-Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam. When Ma'mun assassinated Imam Radha alayhi salam, what did he do? He offered his daughter Fadl to marry Imam Jawad. Why? Because he knew that the Mahdi will come from the descendants of the Holy Lady Fatima. So he knows that Imam Jawad is the descendant of Holy Lady Fatima, and if I marry my daughter to him, then the Mahdi will also be from my generations. But of course, Allah is the master planner, and Fadl did not bear any children to Imam Jawad. So we see that the Bani Abbas knew that the Mahdi was coming, and that's why there was increase of imprisonment of the Imams, increased house arrest, increased harassments of all sorts. And we also see that almost during the time of Imam Mahdi, they used to keep an eye on the on the wife of Imam Hassan al-Askari, so that to ensure that there is no one that will be born, or at least they will be aware if somebody is born, so that they can take the necessary action. So when we see the lives of our Imams, and we understand what they have gone through and how they went through, it is only then that we will understand what is the meaning of the ayat in the Holy Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Rasulullah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. What does it mean? It means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking the Holy Prophet to tell his people that I ask no reward from you except that you love the relatives, the near kin, in the various translations. Now, what is this supposed to mean? The ayat clearly tells us that Allah is telling the Prophet, or in other words, Allah is telling the people that give in return something to Rasulullah for something that He's given you. Because when you want to return something, you must have, in the first place, this person gives. So what has Rasulullah given that Allah has asked the Ummah to return a favor to him? Here, the best thing that He's given is the religion of Islam, the religion of Tawheed. That is the biggest favor that the Holy Prophet has given spread to the people. And hence now Allah wants the people to give in return for that favor something to Rasulullah. But the key word here that qualifies in that ayat is that Allah says it does not have to be a reward. It must be something other than reward. So what is it? It is the near relatives, the love for the near relatives. Now the question arises, who is this near relatives? Near relatives to Rasulullah or near relatives to the Ummah? Now to answer that, let me take you to the logical perspective of this ayat, and then we see what the hadith says. I give you an example. One of you graduates from the university and is looking for a job. You come to me because you know that I know somebody in an organization, maybe the CEO, and you say, please, zara kaam mein laga de. So I go and talk to the CEO, and I talk to him that I know this person, he's a very good, I've noticed his performance, I think he'll be a good employee for you. You get the job. When you get the job, I come and tell you that I don't want any commission from your salary, like what the employment agencies do. Just remember me in your prayers. Or I would say probably, make sure you do well. Now, in both cases, I have not asked for any material reward because I didn't ask for any commission. But what did I say? I said, pray for me. Pray for me is no material reward, but it is something that is benefit in relation to me. When I say, for example, that make sure you do well. Still, it is benefit to me. Why? Because when you will do well in the job, the CEO of the organization will commend me for recommending somebody who's really good to his organization. Hence again, the benefit is to me. The benefit is in relation to me. I didn't ask for any reward, but still there is a benefit. So likewise, in this ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clearly mentioning that although there is no material reward being asked, But whatever is being asked is in relation to Rasulullah. And hence, when he says the love of the relatives, it is the relatives in relation to Rasulullah, not the relation to the Ummah. This is the logical perspective. What does the hadith say? The hadith supports this logic because there was somebody who came and asked that who is this fil qurba? And of course Rasulullah replied that these are the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. Another key word in that ayat is mawadda. Mawadda, which means love, differs from the other word of hope, which also means love. And the difference is that hope can diminish as time passes, it can fade out, or it can even turn into hatred. But mawadda is the type of love that does not diminish. It is always continuous, always progressive, always increasing. And that is the mawadda that Allah wants us to have towards the Ahlul Bayt. And alhamdulillah, we have that mawadda towards the Ahlul Bayt. We have it here with us. Why? Because it is the mawadda of the Ahlul Bayt that is bringing you to this place. It is the mawadda of the Ahlul Bayt that is bringing you here to commemorate their wiladat, their shahadat, which happened how many years ago? 1200 years ago, 1300 years ago, 1100 years ago. How long time has passed? But the mawadda has been sustaining. And that is why mawadda is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us that we must do mawadda to the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. Now, when we know that the Ummah has been asked by Allah to love the Ahlul Bayt, to love the progeny of Rasulullah, now let us look into the life of the Imams. And today I will touch on the life of the 10th Imam. Imam al-Hadi was born in the year 212 AH, and according to some historians 214 AH. And as we know, he was born to the 9th Imam, that is Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. And his mother was Sumana al-Maghribiyya. Al-Maghribiyya in today's world is known as Morocco, hence North Africa. And we have seen some Imams who married women from North Africa. For example, Imam Zain al-Abidin, who married one of the ladies from North Africa and gave birth to Zayd, the martyr. So we see that Imams have married women from North Africa, and according to some riwayat, they mention that the reason why is to promote that there should be no racism when it comes to having relationships. Anyway, so Sumana, and according to historians, that she was a descendant of Mary the Copt, one of the wives of the Holy Prophet. We have even discussed this in one of the previous lectures. So he was born to Sumana. Now, Imam Jawad, our 9th Imam, he passed away. When he passed away, Imam al-Hadi was only about 6 or 7 years old. Mu'tasim was the Abbasid Caliph at that time. When Mu'tasim came to, imagine Mu'tasim has now assassinated Imam al-Jawad, and now he calls, he now knows that Imam al-Hadi is there in Medina. He calls one of his colleagues by the name of Umar al-Faraj. And he tells Umar al-Faraj that, do you remember the question that al-Jawad had replied in response to Yahya ibn Aqsam regarding the kafara of a person who kills an animal in the state of Ihram during Hajj? Umar al-Faraj replies, yes, I know. I remember that question, that answer that he gave. Mu'tasim asks him, do you think that knowledge came from divine guidance, or was it taught by a tutor? So after a series of arguments, Umar al-Faraj says, it's probably taught by a tutor, because he was very young when he answered that question. He says he was probably taught by the tutor. So Mu'tasim tells Umar, I want you to go to Medina and look for the person al-Hadi, that is the son of Imam al-Jawad. Look for him, and he's only 6 right now. I want you to look for him a tutor that would teach him in such a manner that he would forget Islam, or he would not be able to learn, or rather, because normally when the mind is, when you have a small child, you will teach him so that his mind is configured to understand that kind of understanding. So Imam Tasim wanted to do the same thing with Imam al-Hadi. So he asked Umar al-Faraj to go down to Medina. Now, just imagine, these are our Imams, whether it is 6 years old, 8 years old, or any for that matter, They are our imams, divinely chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is unquestionable that whatever knowledge that they have is divine from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It does not need to be taught. Anyway, Umar Farish proceeds to Medina. He arrives in Medina, looks for the house of Imam al-Hadi, and then he looks for people who can tutor him. So somebody introduces him to somebody by the name of Ubaidullah al-Junaidi. Ubaidullah al-Junaidi was somebody in the time of Medina who was a very good scholar in Quran, in Sharia, in Hadith. So they come, but he was an enemy of the Ahlul Bayt. Ubaidullah ibn Junaidi is asked by Umar al-Faraj, do you see that boy? He's like, yes. He said, do you know him? He's like, yes, I know. He's Ali ibn Muhammad al-Hadi. He's like, okay, I want you to tutor him in such a way that he forgets the Islamic knowledge. Ubaidullah is like, I'm a scholar of Islam, I will not be able to do that. He said, okay, fine. In that case, you teach him in such a way that he does not like the Ahlul Bayt. So he's like, okay, he's a 6-year-old, I will give it a go. A few time passed and somebody happened to see Ubaidullah al-Junaidi and asks him, so how is your servant of Banu Hashim? Ubaidullah al-Junaidi replies, who are you talking about? He said, that young boy whom you're tutoring. Ubaidullah replies, he is not a servant of Banu Hashim, he is not a servant. He is a scholar of the Ahlul Bayt. When I asked him, listen to this, when I asked him to recite a surah, he told me, you name the surah, I will recite. And I would give him the longest surahs and he would continue to recite and recite. And I tell you that this boy, his voice is like Dawood. Because Allah in the Holy Quran says that the voice of Dawood was very strong and excellent. So he says, he quotes that Allah in the Holy Quran says that the voice of Dawood is excellent. I tell you, his voice is just like Dawood because his voice is excellent. And then, Ubaidullah al-Junaidi continues. He said, not only that, he is so extraordinary that when I ask him about a single verse, he tells me, not only, he tells me where it was revealed, when it was revealed, and on whom it was revealed. He was not here 200 years ago, 180 years ago during the time of the Prophet, when the Quran was revealed. Hence, this knowledge that he has is not tutored. This knowledge is surely from the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, Ubaidullah tells the person, that people think that I am disciplining him. In reality, he is disciplining me. Imam al-Hadi, 6-7 years Mu'tasim, when he heard about it, he left it. Became very busy in the affairs of the governing of that. Mu'tasim, and then after Mu'tasim passed away, about 8 years thereafter, and Wathiq, the next Abbasid Caliph, came to power. Wathiq also did not disturb our Imam. He was busy running the affairs of the government, and he passed on. And during that time, we're looking at another 5 years, 8 plus 5. During that time, Imam grew up, and he used to spend a lot of time in Medina, in the mosque of the Prophet, and he would teach the people. And he would teach the people primarily 3 things. One thing is, of course, the teachings of the Islam, the Holy Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet. And the one thing that one of the books that he was referring to is the Sahifa of Ali ibn Abi Talib. The Sahifa, the Sahifa of Ali ibn Abi Talib are the writings of Imam Ali during the time of the Prophet. What the Prophet dictated to Imam used to write down. And that Sahifa book came down from Imam Ali all the way down, and it is presently with our living Imam, with our present Imam. That book contains all knowledges of science, humanity, everything. It contains all knowledge that is required till the day of Qiyamah. I'll give you an example. Imam Ali, the Holy Prophet dictated to Imam Ali, in which Imam Ali writes that there will be a time when there will be iron that will be moving bodies, that will be moving people. There will be a time when iron will be moving bodies or people. So today what do we see? Trains. We see cars. They are iron. They are moving people from one place to the other. And there's so many other examples. For example, the mention about the steel birds. There will be birds that will be made of steel. Today we have aircrafts. And there are many other examples that are included in Sahifa of Ali ibn Abi Talib, which talk about even the present. Anyway, so Imam al-Hadi used to teach people, and one of the prominent teachings that he would talk about is the saying of one of the sayings of the Holy Prophet, where he was in Imam Ali, in which he says that faith resides in the heart of the believer and is confirmed. It is proved by the actions of the believer. This is very important for us, all of us, because it really gives a classic example of how a mu'min should be. Faith resides in the heart of the believer. It is his actions that prove it. What does it mean? It means that you have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have faith in the message of Allah, you have faith, you love the Holy Prophet and the Imam Masumeen, but you can only prove it by your actions. It is not sufficient that you say, I love Allah, I love the Holy Prophet, and I love all the Imams, but namaz, no. Fasting, you skip. That is not what we want. That is not what Islam says. This is the ayat what the hadith means. Applicable on all mu'min. The second thing that Imam al-Hadi would teach are the du'as. One of the, from all our Imams, we know that it was Imam Sajjad who has given us the most number of du'as. How many? Sayyid Sajjadiyah? 51. The second most number of du'as that has come down to us are from Imam al-Hadi. How many are they in number? 43. These are the du'as that he would teach in the Prophet's mosque to all the people. The third thing that he would teach is the Ziyarat Jamia, which is one of the second most powerful ziyarat after Ziyarat Ashura. Ziyarat Jamia gives us the classic position and the status of all our Imams. That is what Ziyarat Jamia is about. And hence this is what our Imam al-Hadi, during the time that he was given the freedom to preach, this is what he did. Wathiq passed away. Mutawakkil came to power. Mutawakkil, during the first 4 years of his caliphate, did not disturb Imam. Why? Because he was very busy in managing the affairs of the government. So he did not do anything. But during those 4 years' time, of course, messages reached to him. And by that time, he was in Samarra. They had moved Bani Abbas had moved the caliphate from Baghdad, the capital, to Samarra. He tells his people, his colleagues, that I will not be like Mu'tasim and Wathiq to leave al-Hadi just like that in Medina, because he had become famous now. Imam al-Hadi became famous, his virtues were spreading. People were learning. Imagine the years that he would spread Islam. Mutawakkil got scared and he said, I will not be like them, I will call him here. So he called somebody by the name of Yahya ibn Harthama and tells him, go to Medina with 300 soldiers and summon al-Hadi to come down and to Surah Man Ra'a, which is the long form for Samarra. Yahya ibn Harthama never believed that Imam al-Hadi could be an Imam. He says, listen to this carefully story. He says that when we left from Samarra towards Medina, I never believed that al-Hadi could be an Imam for the people. We left and we went towards Medina. When we were going towards Medina, along the way, from among my soldiers, there was somebody who was Khawarij. Khawarij, we know, are the descendants of those who went against Imam Ali in the Battle of Siffin. He says there was one more person who was a Shia of the Ahlul Bayt. Now it is normal for a Shia to have been serving the government at that time, out of force or whatever. During the journey from Samarra to Medina, there was an argument that was happening between the two. And during that time, the Khawarij says that we don't understand that Ali ibn Abi Talib has this saying which says that every place on earth is a graveyard for somebody one day. The Khawarij says that how can that be possible? And how can you follow him as an Imam? The Shia says that, well, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib has mentioned it, he must have mentioned it, it's true, it's correct. They went on arguing. They reached Medina. Yahya ibn Harthama looks for the house of al-Hadi. He reaches al-Hadi's house. When he goes in, what does he see? He sees that al-Hadi, there were a lot of people who were knitting clothes, long coats, sweaters, during of that time. And he's wondering that, is this what you call your imam? It is summer. It is hot in Iraq, in the Arabian areas. Why would imam instruct his people to make knitwear coats for the winter coats? So he tells al-Hadi that this is a letter from the Abbasid Caliph Mutawakkil asking you to come to Surah Al-Ra. So al-Hadi says that, why don't you give us 2 days? On the 3rd day we'll go. Let them finish their knitwear, and inshallah we'll go on the 3rd day. Yahya ibn Harthama says, okay fine, 3rd day no problem. We will go after the 3rd day. The 3rd day comes, they depart from Medina. When they depart from Medina, they reach a point where those two, Khawarij and the Shia, had an argument regarding that hadith. When they reached that point, this is Yahya saying the story, he narrates the story. Yahya said that we saw a blizzard coming from far. Blizzard, the snowstorm? It was coming from afar. Al-Hadi told us, and he gave us the coats that they were knitting during the time in Medina. He gave all the coats to everybody to wear. Some of us wore, some of us did not wear. The blizzard came, the snowstorm came, they were all lying down, and then when the storm passed away, they got up. And he says, we came with 300 soldiers, 80 of them had died. Imam al-Hadi tells Yahya, this is what it means when Imam Ali said that every place on earth will be a graveyard for something. Who would think in a desert somebody would pass away and they would be buried there? Those 80 people. Yahya looks at Imam, he says, how did you know? How did you know that we were talking about this hadith right here in this spot? And then Yahya said that it is then that I believe that in his Imam. Beginning of the journey, they go on, they reach Medina. When they reach Medina, Mutawakkil had ordered that Imam be placed in one of the inn where all the beggars normally are placed. And in some riwayat it also mentions that after that he was moved to a prison. The jailer was somebody by the name of Zarquk, who at first was an enemy of the Ahlul Bayt, but then when he was jailing, rather he was taking care of Imam in prison, he saw the virtues of Imam and he converted and he became a lover of the Ahlul Bayt. When Mutawakkil finds out, he moves him to another prison by the name of Said, who was one of the worst peoples, and several tortures they were before upon Imam. And then there was a time when a lot of people had come to know about Imam, his virtues. So a science conference was called, and Imam al-Hadi was invited to the conference, and he was presented with a question. So somebody by the name of Ibn Sakid, he asks Imam in the science conference, a lot of scholars and people, and he asks that why is it that Musa, when Allah sent Musa, the Prophet Musa, he was sent with the rod. Why was Isa sent with the power to cure people and even bring people from life to death? And why was the Holy Prophet sent with the Holy Quran? And Imam al-Hadi beautifully replied. Like for example, when he says about Musa, he says during that time people were believing in magic. So he brought that rod, which he used it for converting into a snake to eat up the other snake. And there are many other, he used the snake for many other purposes because it was the time of magic. When Nabi Isa came, it was a time of medicine. Medicine had progressed. So that is why he brought Nabi Isa, because he always wanted to show the people that anything that in this world is with the will of Allah. Hence he always sent the prophets with the power to do what they could do, but even better. And of course then when he talks about the Rasulullah, he says, why did he bring with the Holy Quran? Because during that time Arabians were a lot about poetry. They were too much into poetry. And hence he sent the Holy Quran, which was beautifully narrated, which was beautifully revealed, and to use for the religion of Islam. Mutawakkil saw that, and he said that, okay, I know he's got that kind of knowledge, but come on, there must be somebody who is able to attack him, or rather be more knowledgeable than him. And look who Mutawakkil calls. And you will laugh, because you see that these people don't learn their lesson. He called who? Yahya ibn Aqsam. Yahya ibn Aqsam, the time of Imam al-Jawad, when he called regarding the story about the kafara of the ihram. You must know about that. Yahya, he calls Yahya and says, I want you to question al-Jawad, al-Hadi. He says, you mean the son of al-Jawad? He's like, yes. He said, don't you know how much embarrassment I was caused during his father's time? He's like, yeah, it could be, but I was not there. I want you to question him. He says, he tells Mutawakkil that, look, these people are really divinely taught. It is not something that is taught to them by people. Yeah? Please leave me out of this. He's like, no, don't you dare talk to me like that. Prepare questions and we will ask him. So Yahya ibn Akhsam goes and tries to make tougher questions. And when I read the biography, I saw that there were 13 questions that he asked. I will not go through all 13, I'll just maybe touch on 4. And he says, he prepares the questions when Imam al-Hadi is summoned to come and answer. He comes and asks him. So the questions that he asked, one of them he asked that why is it in the Holy Quran written that Sulaiman had asked somebody to bring the throne of Bilqis, and a jinn said that, okay, I will bring the throne, and then his vizier, his minister, said that, by the name of Asif, said that I'll bring within the blink of an eye. So why is it then Sulaiman have the power, since he was the prophet, to bring the throne himself? Why did he have to ask somebody else to do it? What does Imam al-Hadi reply? He says Sulaiman did have the power. He wanted to show the people who is going to be after him. Asif is the one who succeeded Sulaiman. He wanted to show that he is my successor, he has that power. Second question he asked. He asked about please say Muhammad wa alayhi He said in Surah Yusuf, it's mentioned that Hazrat Yaqub prostrated, he and his wife and sons, they prostrated to Nabi Yaqub. So how is it that prostration can be done to a man? What did Imam Hadi reply? He says that the prostration is of two types. One is prostration to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one is prostration in respect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says the prostration of Nabi Yaqub to Nabi Yusuf is like the prostration of the angels to Nabi Adam. It is not the prostration to Adam or to Nabi Yusuf. It is the prostration in respect of the power, of the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he asks him the third question. He says, in the battles that Ali ibn Abi Talib fought, in the battle of Jamal, when he was attacking, the people who ran away, Ali ibn Abi Talib said that leave them, let them go away. But in the battle of Siffin, when the people were running away, he said no, you charge them and kill them. So why that kind of controversy? What does Imam al-Hadi reply? He said there was a difference in the battle. In the battle of Jamal, those who were running away were still Muslims. They did not change, they did not become infidels. But those in the battle of Siffin had become infidels. That is the difference. Then he asks the third question. He says about the verse in the Holy Quran in Surah number 31, ayat number 27, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that even if you exhaust 7 seas using the trees as pens, you will not be able to complete the virtue. You will not be able to state all the virtues of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he asked, what are these 7 seas and what are the virtues that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about? Imam replies, he names all the 7 seas that were being referred to in the Holy Quran, and then he says that these virtues of the words, or the virtues of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is mentioned in the Quran, we are those virtues. The Ahlul Bayt are the virtues of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will not be able to completely write all the virtues of the Ahlul Bayt, the Imams. Mutawakkil becomes impressed, and according to some riwayat, it is said that it is then when he told that, okay, fine, we take him out of the prison, but we put him under house arrest. So it's been told in history that he bought a house from somebody by the name of Dalil, and he used to stay there, but under house arrest. Now here is the key thing that we must understand, that here is the time that the house, that not only was he allowed to live in their own house, but it was under house arrest. And the thing about house arrest was that Imams did not have the will to do anything at any time. He had got political blockade, economic blockade. People were not able